The Miner. I just returned from New Zealand no more than a week ago, and I can't stop thinking about the strange man I saw while tramping through the forest. If you know New Zealand, then you would know about the Fox River. I joined a walking tour which took about 15 days, tramping through the South Island exploring. It was the second night of the tour as we slept under the stars. Our campsite was near an old disused mine. Visible were the old rails that they used to push the trolley deep into the mine. From what our guide told us, bats live in there. Cool, I think. I should bear that in mind. It was too tight to explore, but I got into the mouth of the mine and peered in. For a second, I thought I saw what looked to be a light moving, but it couldn't have been anything, right? We set up camp and made dinner over an open fire. Being an Aussie bushman, I knew how to make a decent fire, and soon had damper on the go. It was around 9 p.m. at night when we all hit our sleeping bags, and before we knew it, we were all asleep. It was 2 a.m. when my bladder woke me up. I remember staggering along the trail away from camp and stood relieving myself. As I turned back to go to the camp, there I saw this light bopping along the track towards me. I thought at first it might have been some backpacker walking the track at night, but there was something odd about this light. It was sickly yellow, reminding me of a lantern. Then I saw him. A bearded old man wearing a dirty shirt and dark corduroy pants. Then he vanished. I saw him 1 minute and the next, gone. Guess I did freak a bit, but fascinated at the same time. I didn't tell anyone, but I didn't need to. Chloe, one of the girls who was tracking with us, said she saw this old man walking past her as she laid on the ground. I told everyone about what I saw. The guy looked shocked but said nothing. Later on in the day, we both dropped back from the group, and she told me who that man was. He was a hermit who used to mine those hills, and one day he vanished. As it turned out, his mind caved in on him, killing him, and his body was never retrieved. What me and Chloe saw was the old miner's ghost, still going back to his mine, still chipping away for that gold. The Haunted YHA. 2000 was the last time I went on holidays. I took a trip to New Zealand for a few weeks, backpacking around the South Island. I just finished doing a 10-day walking trip around the forests of New Zealand and said goodbye to the people who I did the trip with. Anyways, I ended up in a small village in New Zealand named Withheld. Seriously, I don't fancy getting sued at the moment. I found a reasonably okay YHA. What I can say about the place that it looked to be an old stables dating back in the early 1800s, with the garbles, a porch, and the red brick works. Very gothic appearance. As I started to go up the steps, I saw this guy standing at the bottom wearing round glasses, black pants that were held up by braces, red lanky hair, and a collarless shirt. I'd say good day to the guy, but he just stared at me. I muttered something under my breath and went inside. I rang the little bell, but no one came, so I left my backpack behind the counter and went looking for the owners. I went up a flight of stairs to the first floor, looked around and went up the second floor, where I saw this woman dressed in a gray skirt. She went in one of the rooms, so I smiled and strolled to the room where I saw her go into and knocked on it. No answer. Maybe it was the wrong room. Second room, I did the same. No answer. I tried every damn room there, and no answer. I was very puzzled, but finally I met the owners and signed in. I said nothing about the woman in gray. It was third night when I finally discovered the TV room in a small cold cellar, which you had to climb down to get to. There wasn't much furniture, a settee, half torn, and a leather chair which had this girl sitting in it wearing a plaid shirt, long black hair and jeans. Looked like the fashion from the 70s. She was sitting very straight and looking at the TV, which wasn't even on. I sat down and turned it on, then nodded at her. About 3 seconds, I got bored and turned to say something to the young woman, and she was gone. I would have heard her go. The chair still had the imprint of someone sitting in, but she herself was gone. That freaked me out. I finally worked up the courage the next day when I was leaving and told the owner about what I saw. She called me into the office, sat me down, and asked me what I saw. I began with a bloke who I must say didn't see at all during my time there, the woman in gray, our ghostly maid or whatever, right? And the young woman who I saw but didn't see. I was told that the young woman died of a heroin overdose back in 1979, and her spirit still sits in the chair she died in. Sisters in Europe. I'm a 25-year-old Australian who traveled around Europe last year with my younger sister, who was 20 years old. In the story, I'll just call her Kay. Kay and I have been traveling for 3 months by ourselves and with some friends for some parts. Kay and I are both interested in the supernatural, so on our adventures, we went to a few ghost tours here and there, explored the underground Edinburgh vaults, Paris catacombs, and old supposedly haunted castles. While all these activities were super fun and educational, we never had one creepy or unexplained experience. The creepy and unexplained don't come until the last few days of our trip, when we weren't looking for or expecting it. The first experience took place in early morning Dublin, before sunrise. At this stage of the trip, Kay and I were traveling just the two of us, and we were running quite low on money. We had a day trip booked to take us out to see some castles and other sites of Ireland. We had been instructed via email to meet up with our tour group at a Dublin train station at 6:30 a.m. Low on money and not wanting to pay for a taxi, Kay and I decided to get up extra early and walk to the train station. According to the front desk at our hotel, it would take us roughly 30 minutes to walk there, so we set off at 5:45 a.m. just to be safe. Being the eldest sibling, I felt responsible for Kay's safety, so I was always very aware of our surroundings. As we were walking in the dark to the train station, the streets were still very quiet at this time of morning. We saw a few people here and there, but not enough to feel comfortable about two girls walking alone. Anyway, to the weird part, Kay and I have been walking for about 20 minutes when I noticed the shadow of a person approaching us on the sidewalk. I looked behind me to see if we were dealing with someone friendly or not, but nobody was there. Besides a couple walking on the opposite side of the street and in the opposite direction to us. When I turned forward, the third shadow was still there. This time Kay turned around to look behind us, and when turning back she asked me, "Did you just look behind us because of that shadow?" To which I responded, "You see it too?" We weren't freaked out. I suggested that it may be just an optical illusion, like perhaps one of us was creating two shadows due to the angle of the sidewalk or something like that. So we tried to prove that theory by putting our arms straight up in the air and waving them around while watching the three shadows. When we did this, only two of the shadows copied our movements. The third simply kept walking along the side of ours casually. Kay and I began both laughing with a nervous tick. We spent the rest of the walk looking behind us, trying to catch something or someone following us, but we never saw anybody, and the shadow walked with us the entire way to the train station until it was too lit up to see any of the three shadows anymore. Personally, I like to think that perhaps it was a guardian of some sort. Kay and I should have gotten a taxi. It wasn't smart for the two of us to be walking around in the dark in a place that we barely even knew. So maybe the shadow was just trying to make sure that we arrived at our destination safely. The second unexplained moment happened a few days later back in London. Kay and I were exhausted, and I got to bed early in our hotel room. We had a single bed each, with a small space in between. We were watching a movie on TV. I rolled over first and told Kay that I was going to sleep. Maybe 5 seconds later, I felt a heavy pressure on the end of my bed, just as if someone had sat on it. The bed even dipped, and I had to pull my feet up. Assuming it was Kay, I didn't even bother turning over. I just asked her what the hell she was doing. That's when I heard Kay ask me from her bed what I was talking about. I spun around and sat up immediately. There was There was nothing on the end of my bed, and it was clear that Kay had not moved from her position, as the chips she had been eating were still resting on her tummy. I told Kay that someone had totally just sat on my bed, and we both did the what the fuck laugh again, but I wasn't really scared. Less than 5 minutes later, I rolled over and went to sleep again, with no more occurrences. Safe to say, we came back home with a few fun stories to tell.